You know that feeling when you see your ex across a crowded room and your entire body just stops? Like every cell remembers exactly why you left, why you changed your locks, why you still sleep with the lights on. That's what happened to Melanie Carson the moment she spotted Scott Foster leaning against the marble bar, swirling whiskey like he owned the place, like he still owned her. Scott Foster. 6 feet of controlled violence in a rental suit, nursing whiskey like it was communion. Her ex. The man who'd told her that love meant obedience, that no one else would ever want damaged goods, that leaving him would be the biggest mistake of her pathetic life. Their eyes met across the crowd. His mouth curved into that smile, the one that used to come right before his fist. "Told you I'd always find you," he mouthed. The jazz quartet was playing something slow and honey-sweet, completely oblivious to the fact that Melanie's lungs had forgotten how to work. Around her, Manhattan's elite sipped Dom Perignon and discussed their summer homes in the Hamptons. Nobody noticed the woman in the borrowed red silk gown slowly drowning in the middle of their elegant party. Her fingers trembled around her event tablet. 3 years. She'd spent 3 years clawing her way out of his shadow, rebuilding herself piece by broken piece. She'd left Chicago, changed her number, told herself she was safe in New York. Her son was with her mother tonight, thank God, because if Scott knew about— No, don't think about that. The red gown suddenly felt too tight, too exposed. She'd borrowed it from her best friend Maya, who'd insisted she needed to own her power tonight. Power. What a joke. She was the same terrified woman who used to hide kitchen knives in her coat pockets, who'd memorized the exits in every room, who still flinched when men moved too quickly. Scott started walking toward her. The room tilted. Melanie backed up, her heel catching on nothing, and that's when she collided with something solid. Someone solid. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her before she could fall. The scent hit her first. Leather and smoke and cedar. The kind of cologne you couldn't buy in department stores. Old money. Dangerous money. Careful. The voice rolled over her like aged whiskey, dark and smooth and Italian around the edges. She tilted her head back and found herself staring at a man who looked like he'd been carved from Mediterranean marble. Severe cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they were almost black. A scar traced from his left eyebrow into his hairline, a silver thread against olive skin. He wore a Tom Ford suit like it was armor, tailored perfectly to shoulders that suggested he did more than sign papers and attend galas. "You look like you're running from ghosts," he observed, his gaze flicking past her toward the bar where Scott had frozen mid-step. The ghost was watching. The ghost was always watching. "Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're ready for another captivating story, go ahead and click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I love knowing how far our stories travel and how many hearts they reach. Your support helps us bring even more thrilling tales your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, settle in. Let's begin the story." Around them, the crowd had gone strangely quiet. People were backing away, creating space like this stranger was radioactive. Melanie noticed men in dark suits positioning themselves near the exits, not obviously, but deliberately. The kind of security that didn't need visible weapons. "Cristiano Barone," someone whispered nearby, and the name rippled through the crowd like a prayer or a curse. She couldn't tell which. She knew that name. Every coordinator in Manhattan knew that name. He owned half the luxury venues in the city, or at least, that's what people said in daylight. At night, the rumors got darker. Stolen art, underground auctions, the kind of power that made the FBI nervous and made other men disappear. Melanie's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could feel it through her back. Scott was still watching, his face twisted with something ugly, rage mixed with fear. He'd seen who she'd bumped into. He was backing away now, slowly, like a dog that had just spotted a bigger predator. And suddenly, Melanie had the worst, most brilliant idea of her entire life. She turned in Cristiano's grip, his hands still steadying her, warm through the silk of her gown, and looked up at this dangerous stranger with his scarred face and his predator's eyes. "I need a favor." Her voice came out stronger than she expected. Maybe because the champagne she'd been stress sampling all evening was finally hitting her bloodstream. Maybe because terror and alcohol made excellent courage when mixed correctly. One dark eyebrow rose fractionally. "A favor. Please, kiss me," she blurted, her voice barely a whisper. "My ex is watching. Just, please." Cristiano's eyes narrowed, dark and assessing. "You don't even know who I am." "I don't care," she said, the words trembling but sure. "He's watching." A pause. Then, with the faintest smirk, Cristiano set his glass aside. "Then let's give him something worth watching." The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Even the jazz quartet had faltered into silence. Cristiano's hand moved from her shoulder to cup her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. This close, she could see his eyes weren't just black. They held flecks of amber, like embers in dark water. She could see the faint stubble along his jaw. Could feel the controlled strength in the way he held her. Like he was very used to measuring exactly how much force to use. "Do you have any idea who I am?" His voice was low enough that only she could hear, intimate as a secret or a threat. "Someone everyone's terrified of," Melanie whispered back, reckless with heartbreak and champagne and 3 years of running. "Which makes you perfect for what I need." Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or interest. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Melanie's breath caught despite everything. The panic, the fear, the fact that she'd just asked a complete stranger to kiss her in front of Manhattan's elite. "This is a terrible idea," Cristiano murmured, but he was already lowering his head. "All my best ideas are terrible," she breathed. When his mouth touched hers, the entire world disappeared. It started as performance. Melanie was certain of that. Cristiano Baroni was simply doing a desperate woman a favor, giving her a moment of dignity in front of her abusive ex, a calculated gesture from a calculated man. But somewhere between the first touch of his lips and the second breath, it stopped being theater and became something else entirely. His mouth was warm and tasted like the Macallan she'd seen him holding earlier. Smoke and complexity, and something darker underneath. His hand slid into her hair, pins scattering as he tilted her head to deepen the kiss. And Melanie forgot they had an audience. Forgot that she'd only asked for a simple press of lips. Forgot everything except the way his other hand had moved to her waist, pulling her closer against that expensive suit, against the solid heat of him. She made a sound. Something embarrassingly desperate, needy, and felt him smile against her mouth. Then he bit her lower lip, gentle but possessive, and Melanie's knees actually buckled. He caught her, of course, shifted his weight to support her like women fainted into his arms every day. Maybe they did. When he finally pulled back, Melanie's carefully applied lipstick was ruined, and her hair had come loose from its elegant twist. Cristiano looked completely unaffected, except for a slight darkness in his eyes and the faint trace of her lipstick on his mouth. He wiped it away with his thumb, never breaking eye contact. "Better?" he asked quietly, and his voice had gone rougher, like gravel wrapped in velvet. Melanie couldn't speak. She nodded, her fingers still clutched in his lapels, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a room that had started spinning. Over his shoulder, she saw Scott, pale, furious, backing toward the exit like the coward he'd always been. Afraid. For the first time since she'd known him, Scott Foster looked genuinely afraid. Around them, camera phones were already up. Tomorrow, this moment would be everywhere. Tabloids, social media, whispered gossip over expensive lunches. The woman in red who'd kissed Cristiano Baroni under the chandeliers. She should have been terrified. She'd just made herself visible to a man who controlled the criminal underworld. She'd just tangled herself up with someone infinitely more dangerous than the monster she'd been running from. But standing there in his arms, watching Scott disappear into the crowd, all Melanie felt was free. Cristiano's hand was still at her waist, possessive and warm. His eyes searched her face like he was reading a document written in a language only he understood. "You have no idea what you just started," he said softly. "I don't care," Melanie whispered back, and meant it. The jazz quartet started playing again, filling the silence with something slow and sultry. The gala resumed its elegant rhythm. But Cristiano Baroni didn't let her go, and Melanie Carson didn't ask him to. She'd asked a stranger for one kiss to save herself from a ghost. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known as she stood there in her borrowed red gown with her heart hammering and her lipstick ruined, was that the man she'd begged for protection was about to rewrite every rule of her carefully rebuilt life. That single, desperate kiss under the Manhattan chandeliers had just ignited a chain of events that would transform her from a terrified survivor into the one woman powerful enough to stand beside a king. But that story, the one about blood and power and a love that burned like controlled fire, that story was just beginning. Melanie woke to her phone vibrating like a bomb about to detonate. 43 missed calls, 67 text messages. Her email inbox showed 312 unread. The morning light filtering through her apartment's thin curtains felt accusatory, too bright for the mess her life had become in less than 12 hours. She reached for her phone with shaking fingers and saw Maya's name lighting up the screen for the 44th time. "Tell me you didn't actually kiss Cristiano Baroni last night." Maya's voice came through the second Melanie answered, breathless and panicked. "Tell me the entire internet is lying." Melanie's mouth was dry, her head pounding from the champagne and adrenaline hangover. "I can't tell you that." Oh my God, Mel. Do you have any idea?" Maya's voice broke off into rapid-fire Spanish cursing. "It's everywhere. You're on page 6. You're trending on Twitter. Someone caught the whole thing on video and it's got 3 million views. The way he kissed you, Mel, it looks like..." "Like what?" Melanie's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Like he owns you." The words hit like a fist to the sternum. Melanie hung up and opened her news app with numb fingers. The headlines screamed at her from every major outlet. Mystery woman kisses Mafia. King Cristiano Baroni at charity gala. Who is she? Brunette beauty caught in passionate embrace with NYC's most dangerous bachelor. Barone's new obsession. Exclusive photos inside. The photo was devastating. Cristiano's hand tangled in her hair, her body curved against his, the crystal chandeliers creating a halo effect around them like something out of a Renaissance painting. She looked like she was drowning in him. He looked like he was claiming her. 3 million people had watched her beg a stranger for a kiss. 3 million people had witnessed her desperate, reckless attempt to escape her past. And now the entire city knew her face. Her work phone started ringing. Richard Castellane, her boss at the Manhattan Grand. She closed her eyes and answered, "My office, 9 a.m. Don't be late." He hung up before she could respond. The meeting lasted 4 minutes. Richard stood behind his desk like a judge delivering sentence, his face red with contained fury. Unprofessional conduct. Fraternizing with guests. Creating a spectacle that's turned this hotel into a circus. "I'm suspending you for 2 weeks without pay pending an internal review." "Richard, I can explain." "Explain what, Melanie? That you decided to make out with a known criminal in the middle of our most important charity event? That you've turned us into tabloid fodder?" His voice dropped, getting colder. "You're lucky I don't fire you on the spot. 2 weeks. And if I were you, I'd spend that time figuring out how to make this disaster disappear." She walked out of the hotel through the service entrance, hood up, head down. But the photographers were already waiting. Flashbulbs exploded in her face, voices shouting questions she couldn't process. "Miss, what's your name? Are you and Baroni in a relationship? How long have you known him? Is it true you're a former?" She ran. Literally ran down Madison Avenue in her work flats, her laptop bag bouncing against her hip, until she couldn't hear them anymore. She didn't stop until she reached her apartment building in Hell's Kitchen, a 40-year-old walk-up that smelled like cooking oil and yesterday's garbage. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely get her key in the lock. Inside, she locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and slid down to sit on her threadbare carpet. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Scott's voice poured through the speaker like poison. "You think hiding behind another man will save you?" His laugh was vicious, sharp as broken glass. "You think Cristiano Baroni gives a damn about some charity case he kissed at a party? I saw the way you begged him, Melanie. The whole room saw it. You looked pathetic." Her throat closed up, but she forced words out. "Stay away from me." "Or what, you'll call your new boyfriend?" Another laugh, crueler this time. He'll get tired of you, they always do. And when he does, I'll be right here, waiting. Because you're mine. You'll always be mine. And I'm going to make sure he regrets ever touching what belongs to me. The line went dead. Melanie sat there on her floor, staring at nothing, feeling the old fear crawling back under her skin like parasites. She'd been so stupid, so reckless. One kiss had painted a target on her back. And maybe on Cristiano's too, though he probably didn't even remember her name. She was nobody, an event coordinator who'd gotten suspended for one moment of desperate courage. And he was Cristiano Barone, a man who moved through the world like he owned it, who probably had a different woman in a red dress every week. That kiss meant nothing to him, everything to her. She'd destroyed her life for a stranger who'd already forgotten she existed. The knock came at 7 p.m., just as darkness was settling over the city. 3 sharp raps, controlled and precise, not frantic like Maya's usual knock, not aggressive like Scott's pounding used to be, just calm, patient, certain. Melanie looked through the peephole and her heart stopped. Cristiano Barone stood in her dingy hallway like a wolf in a henhouse, utterly out of place and completely unbothered by it. He'd traded the Tom Ford suit for dark jeans and a black button-down, but he still looked like money and danger wrapped in Italian tailoring. 2 men flanked him, massive, silent, wearing the kind of suits that concealed weapons. She thought about not answering, about pretending she wasn't home, about, "I know you're there, Melanie." His voice came through the cheap door, accented and calm. "We need to talk." How did he know her name? How did he know where she lived? Stupid question. Men like Cristiano Barone knew everything. She opened the door but left the chain on, peering through the gap. Up close, in the fluorescent hallway light, he looked tired. Not physically. He still radiated that controlled power. But something in his eyes suggested he hadn't slept, that he'd been dealing with something complicated. "How did you find me?" "You worked the event." His gaze swept over her face, cataloging details. "Your information was in the staff database. It wasn't difficult." "That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Your ex-boyfriend called you today. Left a voicemail threatening both of us." Ice flooded her veins. "How do you—" "I've been monitoring his phone since last night." Cristiano said it like he was discussing the weather, like casual surveillance was normal. Scott Foster, 34, works in commercial real estate, has a history of domestic violence charges that his family's lawyers made disappear. He's angry that you embarrassed him. Angry that you're alive and rebuilding. He's planning to make it worse. Melanie's hand tightened on the doorframe. "That's my problem, not yours. You made it my problem when you kissed me in front of 300 witnesses." Something shifted in his expression, harder now. "Your ex thinks he can threaten you to get to me. He's wrong. But more importantly, he thinks he can still touch you. That ends tonight." "What does that mean?" "It means your ex won't bother you again. My men made sure of that." The casual way he said it made her blood run cold. "What did you do?" "Nothing permanent." A slight pause. "Yet. But he's been informed that any further contact with you will result in consequences he won't survive. His phone has been disconnected. His credit card's frozen. His job received an anonymous complaint about his conduct. He's currently in a holding cell answering questions about some missing escrow funds." Melanie stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. You destroyed his life. In less than a day. I protected you." Cristiano's voice didn't change, still that smooth calm. "There's a difference. I didn't ask you to. You asked me to kiss you. You asked me to make him believe you were protected." His eyes held hers through the gap in the door, dark and absolute. "Did you think I was the kind of man who does things halfway?" She didn't know what to say. Her mind was reeling, trying to understand what kind of power could dismantle someone's entire existence overnight, trying to understand why he'd bothered. "What do you want from me?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Right now, to make sure you're safe." He glanced down the hallway, then back at her. "Can I come in? My men will stay outside." Every instinct screamed that letting Cristiano Barone into her apartment was insane, but he'd already proven he could find her whenever he wanted. already proven he had more power than she could comprehend. And something in his expression, not soft, but not cruel either, made her unlock the chain. He stepped inside, and her tiny studio apartment shrank to nothing. The space that had felt adequate for her and her son suddenly seemed cramped, shabby. She saw it through his eyes: the second-hand furniture, the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter, the toy cars her son had left scattered by the fold-out couch. Cristiano's gaze swept the room, taking in everything, but his expression revealed nothing. He moved to her window, checking the lock, the fire escape access. Professional, systematic. "Your security is terrible," he observed. "Any competent criminal could get through that window in 30 seconds. I can't afford better." "You shouldn't have to." He turned to face her, leaning against the windowsill with his arms crossed. "The photos from last night, they're everywhere. Your face is public now. That makes you vulnerable, and vulnerability attracts predators." "Is that what you are?" She forced herself to meet his eyes. "A predator?" "Yes." No hesitation. No pretense. "But not the kind you need to fear." "How can you possibly expect me to believe that?" "Because I had a choice last night." His voice dropped lower, more intimate despite the distance between them. "When you asked me to kiss you, I could have said no. I could have walked away. I could have let your ex see you panic and done nothing. Why didn't you?" Cristiano was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face like he was trying to solve an equation. "Because I recognized something in you, the way you looked at him, that fear mixed with defiance. You were terrified, but you were standing, still fighting, still refusing to break." He paused. "I respect that." "So this is what? Respect?" Melanie gestured around her apartment. "Tracking my phone, ruining my ex's life, showing up uninvited? This is protection." He straightened, moving closer but stopping just outside her personal space, giving her room to breathe. "You wanted him to believe you were protected. Let me make that real. Your ex won't touch you again because he knows what happens if he tries. But there are others. Reporters, photographers, people who see you as leverage against me or just as tabloid entertainment. They'll come. They're probably downstairs right now." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. $5,000 for an exclusive interview about your relationship with Barone. $10,000 if you have photos. Contact immediately. Cristiano glanced at her screen. "See? So what are you suggesting? That I hide? That I let you control my life the way he did?" "No." The word came out firm, almost sharp. "I'm suggesting you let me give you the tools to protect yourself. Better security, legal representation, distance from the chaos until it dies down." He tilted his head slightly. "And I'm suggesting you stop thinking of me as another man trying to own you. I don't want possession. I want—" He stopped, seeming to choose his words carefully. "To make sure that kiss we shared doesn't get you killed. You're men," Melanie said slowly, the pieces clicking together. "When you said your men made sure he wouldn't bother me." "I have resources," Cristiano interrupted smoothly. "People who handle problems, legally, usually, sometimes less so. That's the world I operate in." "You're talking about the Mafia." She said it flatly. No question mark. "I'm talking about power structures that exist in every major city. Some people call it organized crime. I call it business with consequences." His gaze never wavered. "But yes, if you want to use that word, I'm the head of the Barone family. We control interests in New York, New Jersey, parts of Connecticut. We're not what you see in movies. We're quieter, cleaner, but no less dangerous to people who threaten what's ours. And I'm what's yours now." The question came out bitter. "You became connected to me the moment that photo went public." Not an answer, exactly, but not a denial either. "Whether you like it or not, people now associate you with the Barone name. That brings protection, but it also brings attention. I'm offering to help you navigate that." Melanie wrapped her arms around herself, trying to process everything. "I just wanted him to leave me alone. That's all. One kiss to make him think I'd moved on." "I know." Cristiano's voice softened fractionally. "But nothing is ever that simple. Not in my world. You lit a match, Kara, and now we're both standing in the flames. The question is whether you want to burn alone or let me help you control the fire." She looked at him. Really looked. At the scar that suggested violence in his past. At the expensive watch that suggested power in his present. At the eyes that suggested he'd seen things she couldn't imagine and made peace with them long ago. He was offering protection, but protection always came with a price. "What do you want from me?" she asked again, needing to understand the cost. "Right now, nothing. Eventually?" He moved closer, just one step, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. "I want to understand why a woman desperate enough to kiss a stranger is still brave enough to question him. I want to know what kind of strength it takes to survive what you've survived and still have the courage to ask for help. I want—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "To make sure that when this is over, you're not broken. I'm already broken." "No." The word was absolute. "You're cracked. There's a difference. Broken things don't stand. Don't fight back. Don't walk up to dangerous men and demand kisses." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "You're not broken, Melanie Carson. You're dangerous. You just don't know it yet." The words settled between them like a promise or a threat. She couldn't tell which. "I need to think," she finally said. "Think fast." Cristiano moved toward the door, his men straightening as he approached. "Because tomorrow morning, reporters will camp outside this building. Your landlord will receive offers for information about you. Your friends will be contacted. Your mother—" He paused. "Your son will become part of this story unless you let me help you disappear until it dies down." Her blood turned to ice. "How do you know about—" "I know everything about you now. Not cruel, just factual. It's how I stay alive. But more importantly, it's how I keep the people under my protection alive. Your son is 5. His name is—" "Don't." The word came out sharp, protective. "Don't say his name." Cristiano nodded slowly. "Then let me protect both of you. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to like me. But you need to be smart about this." He opened the door, his men moving to flank him in the hallway. "I'll have someone outside your building tonight," he said without looking back. "Tomorrow morning, a car will be waiting. The choice is yours, Melanie. Stay here and face the chaos alone, or accept help from a man who has the resources to make you invisible." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why do you even care? You don't know me. That kiss was nothing to you." Cristiano turned, his dark eyes meeting hers across the threshold. "If it was nothing, I wouldn't be here." Then he was gone, disappearing down the stairs with his silent guards, leaving Melanie standing in her doorway with her heart hammering and her world tilting on its axis. She closed the door, locked it, slid down to sit on the floor again. Her phone buzzed with another message. Another offer for an interview. Then another. Then another. Through her window, she could see a black SUV parking across the street. Could see a man in a dark suit taking up position near her building's entrance. Cristiano's protection. Or his surveillance. Maybe both. She thought about calling Maya. Thought about calling her mother. Thought about packing a bag and running again, the way she'd run from Chicago. But running hadn't saved her before. And somehow, impossibly, a man she'd kissed under chandeliers had just offered her something she'd been searching for since she'd escaped Scott 3 years ago. The power to stop hiding. She just had to decide if she was brave enough, or desperate enough, to take it from the hands of a man who controlled the city's underworld. Outside her window, the black SUV's engine idled, patient and waiting. The choice was hers. For now. The car arrived at 7 a.m. Melanie hadn't slept. She'd spent the night pacing her studio apartment, phone in hand, watching unknown numbers light up her screen like Christmas decorations made of anxiety. The SUV across the street never moved, its presence both threatening and comforting in a way that made her head hurt. At 6:30, she'd called her mother. "Take Jamie to your sister's in Connecticut," she'd said, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "Don't tell me where. Don't tell anyone. I'll explain later." Her mother, bless her, hadn't asked questions. Just said okay in that tone mothers use when they know their daughters are drowning but also know better than to argue when the water's already over their heads. By 7, Melanie had showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater, and packed a bag she prayed she wouldn't need. The knock was different this time. Soft, almost apologetic. She opened the door to find a woman. Early 30s. Dark hair pulled into a severe bun, dressed in a charcoal pantsuit that screamed expensive competence. "Miss Carson, not a question. My name is Sophia Marchetti. Mr. Barona sent me to escort you. The car is downstairs." Her voice was professional, but her eyes held something like sympathy. "The reporters arrived 10 minutes ago. We should move quickly." "I haven't decided." "Then decide in the car," Sophia interrupted gently, "because in about 30 seconds, they're going to realize which apartment is yours, and this hallway will become a nightmare." As if choreographed, voices erupted from the stairwell, footsteps pounding upward, a man shouting, "Fourth floor." Someone said 4th floor. Sophia's hand was suddenly on Melanie's elbow, firm but not controlling. Now would be good. They moved fast. Down the fire escape instead of the main stairs, Sophia navigating the rusted metal in her heels like she'd done this 1,000 times before. A black Mercedes waited in the alley, engine running, rear door already open. Melanie climbed in, and the door shut behind her with the solid thunk of German engineering and bulletproof glass. Cristiano sat in the far corner of the back seat, dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Scrolling through his phone like orchestrating escapes was just another Tuesday morning task. He glanced up as the car pulled away from her building, taking in her overnight bag and the exhaustion in her face. "You didn't sleep." "Funny thing about having your life implode," Melanie said, aiming for sarcasm, but landing somewhere closer to exhaustion. "It interferes with rest." "Coffee." He handed her a to-go cup from some place she'd never heard of, probably because it only served people who owned small countries. "You take it black, 2 sugars." Sophia did her research. Melanie took the cup because she needed the caffeine more than she needed pride. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can breathe without cameras in your face." He pocketed his phone, giving her his full attention. "And somewhere we can talk about what happens next." "Which is?" "That depends on you." The city slid past the tinted windows. Early morning Manhattan transforming from nightmare to something almost beautiful in the soft light. They crossed the bridge, and Melanie watched her tiny apartment building disappear behind them, wondering if she'd ever see it again. The drive took 40 minutes, heading north into Westchester. The neighborhoods got wealthier with every mile, from cramped buildings to brownstones to estates hidden behind iron gates. The Mercedes turned onto a private road marked only by a small brass plate, Barone. "You're taking me to your home?" Melanie tried to keep the tremor out of her voice. "To my sanctuary," Cristiano corrected. "There's a difference." The gates opened automatically, and Melanie's breath caught. Barone Manor wasn't a house. It was a statement. 3 stories of limestone and glass, modern architecture somehow managing to look both aggressively contemporary and timelessly elegant. Gardens stretched across manicured lawns. A fountain, actual marble fountain, dominated the circular drive. Beyond it, she could see the Hudson River glittering in the morning sun. "This is insane," she whispered. "This is protection." The car stopped at the entrance, and Cristiano climbed out, extending his hand to help her. "Welcome to the safest place in New York." Sophia and 2 other security personnel moved with them, creating a protective bubble Melanie could feel even in the open air. They entered through doors that probably weighed more than her car, into a foyer that could have held her entire apartment 3 times over. Marble floors. Original artwork she vaguely recognized from museum visits. A staircase that curved upward like something from a movie about rich people's problems. The whole space smelled like luxury and old money and something darker underneath. Power that didn't need to advertise itself. "How many people live here?" Melanie asked, her voice echoing slightly. "Just me. And now, temporarily, you." Cristiano gestured toward a room off the main hallway. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather furniture that looked like it cost more than her education. "Sit. We'll talk." She sat because her legs were shaking. Cristiano took the chair across from her, not the dominant position behind the desk, but something closer to equal footing. Sophia appeared with water and fruit, then disappeared like a ghost. "I want you to understand something," Cristiano began, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped. This isn't kidnapping. You can leave whenever you want, but if you leave now, you walk back into that chaos. The reporters, the speculation, the danger. Your face is public. Your name is connected to mine. That doesn't disappear just because you're uncomfortable. So this is a cage, Melanie said flatly. This is an opportunity. He leaned back, studying her. The world thinks you're mine. Let's use that. Stay here until the noise dies down. A week, maybe 2. Let me provide security while you figure out your next move. In the meantime, you're under the protection of the Barone name, which means anyone trying to hurt you has to go through me first. And what do you get out of this? Something flickered across his face. Too quick to read. Peace of mind that the woman I kissed doesn't end up in the Hudson because some tabloid photographer pushed too hard. And honestly, he met her eyes. You interest me. A woman brave enough or desperate enough to kiss a stranger, smart enough to know I'm dangerous, and still here asking questions instead of running. That's rare. So I'm what? Entertainment. You're a variable I didn't anticipate. Not quite an answer. And I don't like unanticipated variables, which means I'd rather have you close where I can understand you. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be honest. He stood, moving to the window overlooking the grounds. I'm not a good man, Melanie. I've done things that would horrify you. I will continue to do things that would horrify you. But I have a code, and that code says you don't let innocent people suffer when you have the power to prevent it. I kissed you. That doesn't make me your responsibility. No. He turned, backlit by the morning sun, his expression shadowed. But it makes you my problem, and I protect what's mine, even when the thing in question doesn't want to be mine, especially then. The words settled heavy in the room. Melanie sipped her expensive coffee and tried to process the impossible choice in front of her. Return to chaos and vulnerability, or stay in luxury with a man who controlled violence the way other people controlled spreadsheets. What are the rules? She finally asked. You don't leave the grounds without security. You don't speak to reporters. You don't contact your ex. Not that he can contact you anymore, but the rule stands. Cristiano moved back toward her, his presence filling the space. Beyond that, the house is yours, the library, the grounds, the pool. Sophia will make sure you have whatever you need. Your son can visit when it's safe. And you have my word. No one touches you here. Not my men, not me, not anyone. Your word. She let skepticism color the words. It's worth more than you think. He crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level, close enough that she could see the amber flecks in his dark eyes again. I know what your ex did to you. Sophia's research was thorough. I know about the hospital visits you claimed were accidents, the police reports that never went anywhere, the way you disappeared from Chicago in the middle of the night with a 2-year-old and nothing but a suitcase. Melanie's hands tightened around the coffee cup. That's private. Nothing is private when you're under my protection. I need to know what I'm protecting you from. His voice gentled fractionally. But here's what I also know. You survived him. You rebuilt. You made a life for yourself and your son in a city that doesn't forgive weakness. That takes strength most people can't imagine. And I'm offering to make sure you never have to hide that strength again. By hiding here? By learning here. He stood, returning to full height. You want to stop being afraid? I'll teach you. You want to stop being vulnerable? I'll show you how to read danger before it arrives. You want to make sure your ex never touches you or your son again? His eyes went darker, harder. I'll give you the tools to make certain of that. It should have sounded insane. It did sound insane. But something in Melanie, the part that had been running for 3 years, the part that was so tired of flinching at shadows, responded to the offer like a flower turning towards sun. Why would you do that? She asked quietly. Because I recognize a survivor when I see one, and survivors shouldn't have to spend their lives surviving. Eventually, they should get to live. He moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Your room is upstairs, 3rd door on the left. Rest. Think. Decide if you trust me enough to stay. Do you want me to trust you? Cristiano looked back, his expression unreadable. I want you to understand me. Trust can come later. He left her in the library with her cooling coffee and impossible thoughts. Through the windows, she could see the grounds stretching toward the river. Beautiful and remote and utterly removed from the chaos of her real life. She thought about her studio apartment with its broken lock, about reporters camping outside, about Scott's voice on her phone, promising he'd always find her. She thought about her son, safe with her mother, and what kind of life she wanted to give him. One where his mother was always running, or one where his mother finally learned to stand? The choice should have been obvious. It should have been easy. But Melanie had learned the hard way that safety always came with a price, and she wasn't sure yet what Cristiano Baroni's protection was going to cost her. She finished her coffee, set the cup down, and went to find her room. If she was going to make a deal with the devil, she at least wanted a good night's sleep first. 5 days. That's how long it took for Melanie to stop flinching every time Cristiano entered a room. Not because he was threatening. He never raised his voice, never moved too quickly, never invaded her space without permission. But his presence carried weight, a gravitational pull that made the enormous manor feel suddenly smaller, the air suddenly thicker. She'd spent those 5 days learning the geography of her gilded cage, the library where she could lose herself in books she'd never had time to read, the gardens where morning mist clung to roses like secrets, the pool house with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson. Sophia checked on her regularly, never intrusive but always present. Security patrolled the grounds in shifts she was learning to recognize. And Cristiano. Cristiano moved through it all like a shark through water, silent and lethal and strangely beautiful. She'd watched him from the library window, taking calls in Italian that sounded like negotiations or threats or both. Watched him in the gym at dawn, moving through forms that looked like martial arts but felt more like controlled violence. Watched him at dinner, the few times he actually sat down to eat, cutting his food with the same precision he probably used to cut through people's lives. On the 6th day, he found her in the library, curled into one of the leather chairs with a book she wasn't actually reading. "You've been avoiding me," he observed, not sitting, just standing in the doorway like he was giving her space to run if she needed it. "I've been processing." "And what have you processed?" Melanie closed the book. "That this is real. That I'm actually staying in a mansion owned by a mafia boss. That my face is still on tabloids, but at least I'm not dealing with reporters. That my son is safe. That I have no idea what happens next." "What do you want to happen next?" The question caught her off guard. "I want to go back to work. I want my normal life back. I want..." She stopped, because the truth was harder than the lie. "I want to stop being afraid." Cristiano moved into the room properly now, sitting in the chair across from her, in the same positions they'd taken that first morning, like they were establishing some kind of ritual. "Then let's start there. What are you afraid of? Besides the obvious?" She gestured vaguely at him, at the house, at everything. "I'm afraid Scott will find a way to hurt my son. I'm afraid I'll never be safe. I'm afraid I'll spend my whole life looking over my shoulder. Those are reasonable fears. Thank you for validating my anxiety," she said dryly. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "What if I told you they were also solvable? I'd ask what the catch is." "The catch is you have to stop thinking like a victim." He leaned forward slightly, his intensity focused entirely on her. "Your ex hurt you because you didn't have power. He threatened you because he thought he could. He haunts you because you still give him space in your head. All of that changes the moment you decide to take control. That's easy to say when you have an army and unlimited resources. I didn't always." The admission was quiet, unexpected. "I was 11 when my father was killed. Rival family. They burned our house, killed my mother, left me with this." He touched the scar on his face almost absently. "And a choice. Die quietly or learn to become dangerous. I chose danger." Melanie stared at him, seeing past the expensive suit and controlled power to the boy who'd survived something unspeakable. "I'm sorry. I'm not." His eyes met hers, unflinching. "Because that night taught me the most important lesson of my life. Fear is only powerful if you're alone. Stop being alone. Stop being afraid." "Is that what you're offering? Company?" "I'm offering education." He stood, moving to the bookshelf, pulling down a slim volume. Tonight. Dinner. Then we start. Start what? Teaching you to stop running. The dinner was intimate. Just the two of them at a table that could have seated 20. Candles providing the only light. The food was Italian, probably prepared by some chef who'd won awards Melanie had never heard of, and it tasted like comfort and danger mixed together. Cristiano ate slowly, watching her over his wine glass. Tell me about him, he said finally. Not the police report version, the real version. Melanie's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Why? Because I need to understand what you're recovering from. And because you need to say it out loud to someone who won't flinch. She set down her fork. He was charming at first. That's the cliché, right? They always are. Scott was ambitious, successful, told me I was beautiful when I sang at this jazz club in Chicago. Made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. Her voice went flat, mechanical. Then we moved in together and he started controlling everything. What I wore, who I talked to, where I went. When I questioned it, he'd tell me it was love, that he was protecting me. And when you pushed back? He pushed harder. She met Cristiano's eyes, refusing to look away. The first time he hit me, I was pregnant. 3 months. He said I'd embarrassed him at a work dinner by laughing too loud. Split my lip, then cried and apologized and swore it would never happen again. She laughed bitterly. It happened again, and again. And by the time my son was born, I was too afraid to leave, too broken to think I could survive without him. Cristiano's knuckles had gone white around his wine glass, but his expression remained controlled. What changed? He went after Jamie. My son was 2, crying because he was sick, and Scott grabbed him. Her voice cracked. He was going to hurt my baby. So I grabbed the lamp, hit Scott hard enough to knock him down, and ran. Took Jamie, 1 suitcase, and disappeared into New York. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with something dangerous. I'm going to kill him, Cristiano said conversationally, like he was discussing dessert options. Eventually. When it won't create problems for you. But he's going to die for touching you, for threatening your son, for making you believe you were anything less than. He stopped, jaw working. Then what? Extraordinary. The word came out rough, like it cost him something. You survived, rebuilt, protected your child. Most people break under that kind of trauma. You're still here. Still fighting. That's not weakness, Melanie. That's steel. Something in her chest loosened at the words. Not healed, but acknowledged, seen. So what now? She asked quietly. Now we teach you to weaponize that steel. He stood, extending his hand. Come with me. She followed him through the manor, downstairs she hadn't explored, into a basement that had been converted into something between a gym and a training facility. Mats covered the floor. Equipment lined the walls. It smelled like sweat and determination. Self-defense? Melanie guessed. Awareness first, defense second, offense third. Cristiano shrugged off his suit jacket, rolling up his sleeves to reveal forearms marked with scars and what might have been old tattoos. Most people think fighting is about strength. It's not. It's about reading intention before it becomes action. It's about making yourself a harder target than the next person. It's about projecting confidence even when you're terrified. He moved to the center of the mat, gesturing for her to join him. Stand there. Now, I'm going to walk toward you. Tell me what you notice. He approached slowly, and Melanie forced herself not to step back, forced herself to watch him the way he'd been watching her, cataloging details. Your hands, she said. They're relaxed. If you were going to hit me, they'd be tense. Good. What else? Your eyes. You're looking at my face, not my body, not assessing targets. Excellent. He stopped an arm's length away. Now, tell me what your body wants to do. Run. Why? Because you're in my space. Because you're bigger. Because... She stopped, forcing honesty. Because you're a man and men have hurt me. And if I were Scott? The name alone made her flinch, and Cristiano caught it immediately. That, he said quietly. That's what we're going to eliminate. The automatic fear response. The flinch. The assumption that proximity equals danger. He held up his hands, palms out. I'm going to touch your shoulder. Just your shoulder. You're going to stand still and breathe through the panic. Ready? She wasn't. But she nodded anyway. His hand settled on her shoulder. Warm, heavy, but not constraining. Melanie's breath hitched, her muscles tensing automatically. Breathe, Cristiano murmured. I'm not him. This isn't Chicago. You're safe. She focused on breathing. On the weight of his hand. On the fact that it wasn't moving, wasn't grabbing, wasn't threatening. Slowly, her muscles unlocked. Good, he said, removing his hand. Again. This time, my hand on your waist. They worked through it systematically, touch by touch, proximity by proximity. Each time, Melanie's panic spiked. Each time, Cristiano waited patiently for her to breathe through it, never pushing, never demanding, just present. An hour later, she could stand with him behind her, his hands on her shoulders, without flinching. That's enough for tonight, he said, stepping back and giving her space. How do you feel? Exhausted, shaky, but she searched for the word, less afraid. Progress. He grabbed water bottles from the mini fridge, tossing her one. We'll do this every night. Build your tolerance. Teach you to read threats versus safety. And eventually, his smile was sharp, predatory. Teach you to make men like your ex afraid of you. I don't want to be like you. You won't be. He took a long drink, watching her over the bottle. I became dangerous because I had to. You're becoming dangerous because you deserve to be. There's a difference. They stood in the training room, both breathing hard, sweat cooling on skin, and something shifted between them. Not attraction, exactly, though Melanie was honest enough to admit he was devastating to look at. But recognition. Respect. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Cristiano moved toward the stairs. We're just getting started. The days developed a rhythm after that. Mornings, Melanie would read or walk the grounds with Sophia, learning the layout, memorizing exits without even realizing she was doing it. Afternoons, she'd video call Jamie, her heart aching at his smile, at the normalcy of her mother's house in Connecticut. Evenings, she'd have dinner with Cristiano, sometimes silent, sometimes filled with conversation that ranged from books to politics, to the mechanics of running an empire built on shadows. And nights. Nights were training. Cristiano taught her to read body language, to spot intention in the set of shoulders, the angle of approach. Taught her where to strike to disable rather than anger. Taught her that silence could be more intimidating than screaming, that stillness projected more power than frantic movement. Never let fear make your voice small, he told her on the 8th night, circling her on the mat like a predator teaching prey to become a predator. Even silence can be a gun, but when you speak, speak like you expect to be obeyed. I'm not you, Melanie countered, blocking his advance with the technique he'd shown her. No, you're better. He swept her legs, controlled, giving her time to fall safely. I command through fear, you could command through respect. Much more powerful. She hit the mat, rolled, came up in a crouch. You're trying to build my confidence. I'm trying to show you what you already are. He extended his hand to help her up. You survived, Scott. You protected your son. You walked up to a stranger at a party and demanded help. That's not weakness, Kara. That's a woman who knows what she wants and takes it. His hand was warm, calloused, strong. Melanie let him pull her up, and suddenly they were too close, breathing the same air, the training session shifting into something else. You're dangerous, she whispered. So are you. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. You just needed someone to point it out. The moment stretched, tension building like a storm about to break. Melanie could feel her pulse in her throat, could see the same awareness in Cristiano's dark eyes. Then he stepped back, releasing her hand, the spell breaking. That's enough for tonight. You're learning quickly. She wanted to protest. Wanted to close the distance he'd created. No, she couldn't want him. That was insane. He was a criminal. A killer. A man who controlled violence the way other people controlled their tempers. But he was also the first man in years who'd touched her without taking, who'd given her power instead of stripping it away. Cristiano. Go to bed, Melanie. His voice had gone rough, almost pained. "Before one of us does something we'll regret." She left the training room, her heart hammering, her body humming with adrenaline and something more dangerous. Upstairs, in her borrowed room with its silk sheets and river views, she lay awake and tried not to think about the way his hands had felt on her skin, the way he'd looked at her like she was worth protecting, worth teaching, worth. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "The reporters are starting to lose interest. Another week and you can go home if you want, but I hope you'll stay longer. See." She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She should want to leave, should want to return to normal life, to her apartment and her job and her independence, but normal life had been surviving. And for the first time in years, she was learning to live. She typed, "What happens after I stop flinching?" His response came immediately. "Then we teach you to fight back." Melanie set down her phone and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Somewhere in this enormous house, Cristiano Barone was probably awake too, probably thinking similar impossible thoughts. They were playing with fire. The question was whether they'd burn, or whether they'd learn to control the flames together. The FBI arrived on day 13. Melanie was in the garden, morning sun warming her skin, practicing the breathing techniques Cristiano had taught her, counting inhales, extending exhales, staying present in her body. She'd just noticed how good it felt to exist without fear for once when Sophia appeared on the path, her expression carefully neutral. "Miss Carson, we have visitors." The agents were already in the library by the time Melanie arrived. Two of them, matching dark suits and practiced expressions that oscillated between sympathy and suspicion. A woman, mid-40s with steel gray hair, and a younger man who looked like he'd graduated from Quantico approximately 15 minutes ago. Cristiano stood by the window, his posture relaxed, his eyes calculating. He'd clearly been in the middle of a call when they'd shown up, his phone still in hand, his suit jacket unbuttoned in that way that meant he'd been pacing. "Miss Carson," the female agent said, standing as Melanie entered. "I'm Special Agent Rachel Morrison, FBI. This is Agent Kim. We'd like to ask you some questions." "About what?" Melanie's voice came out steadier than she expected. Weeks of training paying off in unexpected ways. "About your relationship with Mr. Barone." Agent Morrison's smile was professional, cold, and specifically, how you came to be staying at his residence. "I'm a guest," Melanie said simply, moving to stand near Cristiano, not behind him for protection, but beside him. "A choice. After a photograph of us together went public, I received threatening messages. Mr. Barone offered me a safe place to stay until the media attention died down." "Threatening messages from whom?" "My ex-boyfriend, Scott Foster." Agent Kim consulted his notes. "The same Scott Foster who's currently under investigation for embezzlement and is claiming he's being framed?" Melanie's blood went cold. She glanced at Cristiano, who remained impassive. "Is he claiming I'm involved in that?" she asked carefully. "He's claiming you're being used." Agent Morrison stepped closer, her gaze sharp. "That Mr. Barone is using you as a civilian front to legitimize his operations. That your presence here is part of a larger strategy to appear sympathetic to law enforcement. That's absurd." "Is it?" The agent's eyes narrowed. "You worked, as an event coordinator. You have no connection to organized crime, and yet you're living in the home of a man we've been investigating for years. You can see why that raises questions." "I can see why you'd want it to raise questions," Melanie countered, her voice hardening. "But the truth is simpler and sadder. I was at a charity event. I saw my abusive ex. I panicked. Mr. Barone was kind enough to help me, and when the resulting publicity put my son in danger, he offered sanctuary. That's it. There's no conspiracy." Agent Morrison exchanged a look with her partner. "Your ex-boyfriend claims Mr. Barone's organization has been harassing him, freezing accounts, interfering with his business, threatening him." "Good," Melanie said flatly, surprising herself. "He beat me for 2 years. He threatened to hurt my child. If someone's finally making him face consequences, I'm not going to apologize for that, even if those consequences are illegal." "Are you asking if I know about Mr. Barone's business practices?" Melanie held the agent's gaze. I don't. Are you asking if I care that my abuser is suffering? I don't. Are you asking me to betray someone who's protected me and my son when the legal system failed to do so? She paused. Then no. I won't help you. Cristiano's hand found hers. A brief touch, there and gone, but warm, supportive. Agent Morrison's expression shifted, something like respect flickering across her features. Miss Carson, we're not trying to victimize you further, but you need to understand who you're involved with. I understand perfectly, Melanie said quietly. Better than you think. The agents left with warnings and business cards and thinly veiled threats about obstruction. Sophia showed them out while Melanie stood in the library, her hands shaking with delayed adrenaline. Cristiano moved to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of something amber. You were magnificent. I was terrified. You were strong. He handed her the glass. They'll come back. Probably with more questions, possibly with warrants. Scott's trying to leverage their investigation to hurt us both. Will it work? Not if you stay consistent. He sipped his drink, studying her over the rim. But you need to understand what you just committed to. By refusing to cooperate, you've tied yourself to me in the FBI's eyes. They'll assume you know more than you're saying. They'll dig into your life, your finances, your history. Let them. The words surprised her, but she meant them. I have nothing to hide, and I'm not going to help them hurt you because they think you're a criminal. I am a criminal, Melanie. You're also the only person who's helped me in 3 years. She drank, the whiskey burning her throat. So they can investigate all they want. I'm not betraying you. Something in his expression shifted. Gratitude mixed with something darker, more possessive. He set down his glass and moved closer, his hand coming up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. You're either the bravest or the most foolish woman I've ever met. Maybe both, she whispered. His thumb traced her cheekbone, the same gesture from their first kiss, and Melanie's breath caught. The training room tension had been building for weeks. Every touch during practice, every long conversation over dinner, every moment of unexpected understanding. Tell me to stop, Cristiano murmured, his face inches from hers. What if I don't want you to? His kiss was nothing like the performance under the chandeliers. That had been theater. This was real, controlled, but desperate, like he'd been holding back for weeks and had finally reached his limit. His hand slid into her hair, the other wrapping around her waist, pulling her against him. Melanie kissed him back, pouring 3 years of fear and loneliness and desperate hope into it. Her hands fisted in his shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that kept trying to drown her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cristiano pressed his forehead to hers. This is a terrible idea, he said roughly. All my best ideas are terrible. She smiled, echoing her own words from that first night. Remember? Melanie. They'll come for you again, she interrupted, suddenly certain. The FBI, Scott, whoever else thinks they can hurt you. And I'm not running, not anymore. So either accept that I'm staying, or... He kissed her again, cutting off the ultimatum, and she felt him smile against her mouth. Stubborn, he murmured. You taught me that. I'm a terrible influence. The best kind. They stood in the library, wrapped around each other, while outside the world continued to hunt them both. But for that moment, for that stolen fragment of time, Melanie wasn't afraid. She'd found something worth fighting for that wasn't just survival. She'd found someone who saw her scars and called them strength. And when Cristiano Baroni held her like she was something precious instead of something broken, Melanie finally understood what power really meant. Not controlling others, but refusing to let anyone control you. The ghost of Scott Foster could return with agents and accusations and all the rage in the world. She wasn't running anymore. She was learning to stand. And beside her, teaching her every step of the way, was the most dangerous man in New York, who looked at her like she was the dangerous one, which meant Scott Foster had made his biggest mistake the night he'd smirked at her from that bar. He'd forced her to find protection from a man who never did anything halfway. And Cristiano Baroni had just declared, silently, through action rather than words, that Melanie Carson was his to protect, which meant Scott's days were numbered. They both knew it. The only question was how long the ghost would take to realize he was already dead. 3 weeks became a month became 6. The FBI circled like sharks, but Melanie gave them nothing. Agent Morrison returned twice more, each time with sharper questions and softer threats. Each time, Melanie sat across from her in Cristiano's library and repeated the same truth. She was a guest, she knew nothing about his business, and she refused to be weaponized against a man who'd shown her more respect than the legal system ever had. The tabloids eventually moved on to fresher scandals. Her suspension ended, but Melanie didn't go back to the Manhattan Grand. Instead, she found herself in Cristiano's office one morning, staring at paperwork for the Baroni Foundation, a charity he'd been funding quietly for years, helping businesses in struggling neighborhoods. "I want to redirect this," she told him, her finger tracing the mission statement, toward women leaving abusive situations, housing assistance, legal aid, job placement, the things I needed and couldn't find. Cristiano looked up from his laptop, something unreadable in his expression. "You want to run it?" "I want to transform it." She met his eyes. "You built this to clean money and create goodwill. Let me build something that actually saves lives." He studied her for a long moment, then closed his laptop. "Do it. Whatever you need. Resources, contacts, space. It's yours." "Just like that?" "You've done what I never could," he said quietly. "You turned fear into grace. You survived hell and came out wanting to help others survive theirs. That's not something I can teach. That's who you are." The foundation became her cathedral. She met with lawyers, social workers, women who'd escaped situations that mirrored her own. She secured a building in Brooklyn, nothing fancy, but safe, with beds and counselors and guards who understood that protection meant more than muscle. Cristiano watched her transformation with something like awe. She moved through his world now with confidence, speaking to his associates with the same calm authority she used in board meetings. When a DeLuca captain made a crude comment about her role, she'd looked at him with such withering contempt that he'd apologized before Cristiano could reach for his gun. "You're dangerous," Cristiano told her one night, watching her review applications at his desk, her hair piled up, reading glasses perched on her nose. "You keep saying that, because it keeps being true." He moved behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders. "The FBI thinks you're my weakness. They're wrong. You're my mirror. You show me what power looks like when it's used for something besides control." She tilted her head back to look at him. "Are you getting philosophical on me?" "I'm getting honest with you." His hands moved to cup her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones in that gesture that had become theirs. "I love you, Melanie Carson. I've loved you since you begged me to kiss you with terror in your eyes and steel in your spine. And I need you to know that before everything gets worse." Her heart stopped. "Worse how?" "Scott's working with the DeLucas now. They think hurting you will hurt me. They're right." His jaw tightened. "I've increased security. Sophia doesn't leave your side when you're at the foundation. But if he makes a move..." "We handle it together," Melanie interrupted, standing, turning to face him fully. "I love you too, and I'm not running from this fight." Their kiss was fierce, desperate, full of everything they hadn't said in the months of circling each other. Cristiano lifted her onto the desk, scattering papers, his hands in her hair, her legs wrapping around his waist. "I should have told you weeks ago," he murmured against her mouth. "You showed me every day." Her hands framed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You taught me to stop flinching, to stop hiding, to believe I was worth protecting. That's better than words." They made love in his office while the city glittered beyond the windows, while danger circled closer, while the ghost of her past prepared his final move. For those stolen hours, love felt possible. Then her phone rang at 3 a.m. with a number she didn't recognize. Cristiano answered, his voice sleep-rough and immediately sharp. "Who is this?" Melanie heard Scott's laugh through the speaker, venomous and triumphant. "Tell her I have her son. Tell her if she wants to see him alive, she comes alone. No cops, no Mafia boyfriend, just her." A pause. "The old warehouse on Pier 47, 1 hour. And Cristiano, if I see any of your men, the kid dies first." The line went dead. Melanie was already moving, throwing on clothes with shaking hands, but Cristiano caught her wrist. "You're not going alone. He has my son. And I have an army." His eyes were black, absolute. "We're getting Jamie back. But we're doing it smart, not desperate," he said. "I don't care what he said." Cristiano was already on his phone, calling in his network. "He's dead. He just doesn't know it yet." Cristiano's fury was a living thing, controlled but lethal, burning through Brooklyn like wildfire. Within 20 minutes, the Baroni network had mobilized. Cars appeared from nowhere. Dark sedans with darker windows, carrying men whose eyes held the kind of violence that didn't need advertising. Sophia had already pulled up blueprints of Pier 47, marking exits, weak points, sight lines. "He's using the boy as bait," Sophia said, her voice clinical. "He wants you there, Melanie, to leverage against Cristiano." Classic hostage negotiation, except he's too stupid to realize he's negotiating with someone who doesn't negotiate. Classic hostage negotiating. Melanie couldn't breathe properly. Jamie, her baby, alone with that monster in a warehouse full of God knew what. "We don't have time for strategy," he said 1 hour, "and we'll be there in 45 minutes, but we're going in prepared." Cristiano's hand found hers, squeezed once. "I will get your son back. I will end Scott Foster. And I will make sure everyone who helped him understands what happens when they touch my family." My family. The words wrapped around her heart like armor. They drove in convoy. 3 cars, 12 men, enough firepower to start a small war. Melanie rode with Cristiano, watching the city blur past, every second an eternity. She'd changed into dark clothes at Sophia's insistence, practical boots instead of heels, her hair pulled back. "If shooting starts, you stay behind me," Cristiano said, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "No arguments. If he's hurt Jamie, then I'll let you watch me destroy him." His eyes met hers, cold and absolute. "But first we get your son out alive. Everything else is secondary." The warehouse loomed against the East River, abandoned and rotting, the kind of place where bad things happened and nobody looked too closely. Lights burned in the upper windows. Scott's stage, lit and waiting. Cristiano's men spread out like smoke, surrounding the building, cutting off exits. 2 snipers took position on adjacent roofs. Sophia coordinated through an earpiece, her voice steady, turning chaos into chess moves. "He's on the 3rd floor," she reported. Thermal imaging shows 3 heat signatures. Scott, the boy, and 1 unknown. Probably DeLuca muscle. "How's Jamie?" Melanie's voice cracked. "Moving. Conscious. That's all we can tell from here." Not good enough. But it had to be. Cristiano turned to her, his hands framing her face. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "With my life. With his. Then stay close. Stay quiet. And let me work." He kissed her hard, then released her. "Let's go get your son." They entered through a side door Sophia's team had already cleared. The warehouse interior was concrete and shadows, old machinery creating blind spots, decades of abandonment making every step uncertain. Melanie's heart hammered so loud she was sure Scott could hear it from 3 floors up. Cristiano moved like a predator, weapon ready, his men flanking them in formation. They climbed the stairs, metal grating that rang softly with each step despite their care. On the 3rd floor, light spilled from an open doorway. Scott's voice echoed through the space. "I know you're here, Melanie. I can practically smell your fear. Come on out. Let's talk like adults." Cristiano's hand signal held his men in position. Then he stepped into the light, Melanie half a step behind him. The scene was nightmare made real. Jamie, her 5-year-old son, sitting on a chair in the center of the empty space, his face streaked with tears but otherwise unharmed. Scott stood behind him, one hand on the boy's shoulder, the other holding a gun that looked obscene in the industrial lights. A DeLuca enforcer leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching with professional detachment. "There's my girl," Scott said, his smile vicious. "And her new boyfriend, the famous Cristiano Barone. I have to admit, Mel, you traded up. Though I wonder if he knows what you're really like. The whining, the weakness, the way you break so easily. Let my son go, Melanie said, her voice steadier than her hands. This is between us. Oh, it stopped being between us the moment you kissed him. Scott's grip tightened on Jamie's shoulder, making the boy whimper. You made me look weak, Melanie. You embarrassed me, and then you hid behind a criminal, like you were suddenly too good for me. You're right, she said, stepping forward despite Cristiano's warning hand. I am too good for you. I always was, and my son will never know what it's like to be afraid in his own home because of a man like you. Brave words from someone whose kid is one trigger pull from dead. You won't shoot him, Cristiano said calmly, his gun trained on Scott with casual precision. Because the second you do, you die, and you're too much of a coward to die. I've got backup. Scott jerked his head toward the DeLuca man. Your move. My move? Cristiano's smile was terrifying. I have snipers on 2 roofs, 8 men in this building, and enough evidence of your cooperation with the DeLucas to start a war that your friend there doesn't want. His eyes flicked to the enforcer. Walk away now, and you walk away breathing. Stay, and you're dead with him, the DeLuca man considered, then pushed off the wall. This wasn't the deal, Foster. Nobody said anything about killing kids. He headed for the exit without looking back. Scott's face went pale with rage. You can't. You'll what? Melanie took another step forward. You'll hurt my son? You'll try to hurt me? You think Cristiano is the only dangerous person here? Her voice dropped, cold and absolute. You made me this way, Scott. You beat me until I learned to survive. You threatened me until I learned to fight. You broke me until I learned to rebuild stronger. So thank you. Because now I'm standing here. And you're the one who's terrified. Mom? Jamie's small voice broke through the tension. It's okay, baby. Close your eyes for me, okay? Just for a minute. The boy obeyed, squeezing his eyes shut. Scott raised his gun, swinging it toward Melanie. 3 things happened simultaneously. Cristiano fired. Scott fired. And Melanie dove toward her son. The bullet meant for Melanie caught Cristiano in the shoulder, spinning him backward. But his shot had been true. Scott dropped, his gun clattering across concrete, a scream of pain tearing from his throat. Melanie grabbed Jamie, wrapping her body around his, feeling Cristiano's men flood the room, feeling Sophia pulling them both toward safety. Behind her, she heard Cristiano's voice, rough with pain but utterly controlled. You're done, Foster. You're done touching her, done threatening her, done existing in her world. A single gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Then silence. The hospital was too bright, too clean, too full of people who'd never understand that the man bleeding in surgery was a killer and a savior in the same breath. Melanie sat in the private waiting room, the one Cristiano's money had secured within minutes of their arrival, with Jamie asleep across her lap and Sophia standing guard at the door. 4 hours since the warehouse. 4 hours of not knowing if Cristiano would survive the bullet he'd taken for her. Agent Morrison arrived at hour 5, looking exhausted and furious. We have Scott Foster in custody, she said without preamble. Well, what's left of him? Baroni's shot shattered his femoral artery. He'll live, but he'll talk. We're looking at RICO charges against the DeLucas, and Foster's going to prison for kidnapping and attempted murder. Good, Melanie said flatly. Miss Carson, I need to know what happened in that warehouse. My ex-boyfriend kidnapped my son. Cristiano saved him. End of story. Morrison's eyes narrowed. A dead DeLuca enforcer suggests it wasn't quite that simple. He drew on Cristiano's men after Scott went down. Self-defense. Melanie met the agent's gaze without flinching. You want to arrest someone? Arrest Scott Foster for everything he did to me, to my son, to every woman he's hurt. But Cristiano protected my child when your legal system couldn't. The agent was quiet for a long moment. You're in love with him. Completely. He's a criminal. He's mine. The words came out fierce, possessive. And I'm not apologizing for that. Morrison sighed, closing her notebook. For what it's worth, I believe you about Foster. And off the record, I'm glad Barone was there tonight. She stood, heading for the door. But this isn't over, Miss Carson. The DeLucas will retaliate. The FBI will keep investigating. You've chosen a dangerous life. I chose a free life, Melanie corrected. Everything else is just details. Cristiano woke at dawn, groggy from anesthesia and immediately trying to sit up. Melanie pressed him back down with gentle force. Jamie's fine. Safe. Asleep in the next room with your men guarding him like he's royalty. And you? Still here. Still yours. She brushed hair from his forehead, careful of the IV lines. You took a bullet for my son. I'd take 1,000 for him. For you. His hand found hers, squeezed weakly. Is Foster alive, talking, going to prison for a very long time? She paused. The DeLuca enforcer didn't make it. Good. No remorse in his voice. Just fact. Cristiano, the FBI, already handled. Sophia's been coordinating with our lawyers. Self-defense, witness statements. It's clean. He tried to sit up again, wincing. But the DeLucas are backing off, Sophia said from the doorway. I've been fielding calls all night. They don't want a war over Foster. He wasn't worth it to them. Just a pawn they used and abandoned. Melanie watched something pass between Cristiano and Sophia. Unspoken communication built on years of trust. What happened to their family interests while I was in surgery? Cristiano asked. Sophia's smile was sharp. Strange things. Shipments delayed. Bank accounts frozen pending investigation. Their legitimate businesses suddenly facing health inspections. Nothing permanent. Just a reminder of what you could do if they push. And their response? Request for a sit-down. Peace terms. They'll leave you alone if you leave them alone. Cristiano nodded slowly, then looked at Melanie. Your call. This is your life now too. Do we negotiate or do we destroy them? The question hung in the air. Melanie thought about power, about violence, about the cost of revenge versus the price of peace. She thought about Jamie asleep in the next room, innocent and safe because of the man bleeding in this hospital bed. We negotiate, she said finally. But from strength. They need to understand that touching us, any of us, means their empire burns. Can you make that clear without starting a war? I can make that crystal clear, Cristiano said softly, pride lighting his eyes despite the pain. When did you get so strategic? You taught me. She leaned down, kissed him gently. You taught me everything. 2 weeks later, Melanie stood in Cristiano's office. Their office now, reviewing the peace agreement with the DeLucas while he recovered. His men looked to her for decisions. His associates called her for approval. Somewhere in the chaos of kidnapping and bullets and blood, she'd stopped being the woman under Cristiano's protection and become his partner. When he was finally strong enough to leave the hospital, she drove him home herself, Sophia following in the security detail. You've been running my empire, Cristiano observed, watching her navigate Manhattan traffic with calm efficiency. Our empire, she corrected, and I've been maintaining it, not running it. There's a difference. Is there? His hand found hers on the gear shift. Because from where I'm sitting, you've made 3 business decisions that increased our legitimate revenue, negotiated peace with our biggest rivals, and reorganized security protocols to be more efficient. That's not maintenance. That's leadership. I had a good teacher. You had potential, he countered. I just pointed it out. Back at the manor, with Jamie running through the gardens under Sophia's watchful eye, they stood in the library where everything had started. You were never my weakness, Cristiano said, pulling her close despite the protests from his healing shoulder. You were the reason I stopped hiding behind power. You showed me what it looks like to be strong without being cruel, to lead without controlling, to love without possessing. Melanie smiled against his chest. And you were the reason I learned to use my power instead of fearing it. You taught me that survival isn't enough, that I deserve to live, not just exist. We're quite the pair. We're perfect. He kissed her then, slow and deep, a promise of futures built on trust instead of fear. Outside, Jamie's laughter echoed through the grounds. Inside, 2 survivors who'd found each other in the worst moment discovered they'd created something better than either had imagined. A partnership forged in fire and sealed in blood. Love that didn't heal trauma but transformed it into armor. And power shared between equals. 6 months later, the Carson Baroni Foundation opened its doors in a restored brownstone in Brooklyn. 3 stories of hope, disguised as brick and glass, funded by Cristiano's legitimate businesses and Melanie's relentless vision. The ribbon cutting drew a crowd. Politicians careful to distance themselves from the Barone name but attracted to the photo opportunity. Reporters hoping for scandal. And women. Dozens of women who'd heard whispers that this place was different. That here, safety didn't come with conditions. Melanie stood at the podium in a navy dress that was both professional and powerful, her son in the front row between Cristiano and Sofia. She'd written a speech, practiced it a dozen times, but standing there, looking at the faces watching her, women who saw their own stories reflected in hers. She set the notes aside. "I'm Melanie Carson Baroni," she began, and the hyphenated name still felt new on her tongue. 6 months ago, I was terrified. I'd spent years running from an abusive ex-boyfriend. I was working a job that barely paid rent. I was surviving, not living. And then I made a choice that changed everything. I asked for help. She found Cristiano's eyes in the crowd, saw him watching her with that mix of pride and possession that made her heart race. "This foundation exists because I learned something important. Survival isn't enough. We deserve more than hiding, more than just getting through each day. We deserve to thrive, to rebuild, to transform our trauma into power." She gestured to the building behind her. "This place offers housing, legal aid, job training, counseling, everything I needed and couldn't find. Because no one should have to beg a stranger for protection when they're drowning." A reporter called out, "Mrs. Baroni, is it true you met your husband at a charity gala?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Melanie smiled. "Yes. I asked him to kiss me because my ex was watching from the bar." She paused, letting the absurdity of it settle. "And I had no idea that one desperate kiss would lead to this. To safety, to partnership, to learning that asking for help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do." Another reporter, "And your relationship with the Barone family's business interests?" Cristiano stood, moving to join her at the podium. His shoulder still ached in cold weather, a reminder of bullets and warehouses and choices made in the dark. He put his hand on her waist, the gesture both intimate and territorial. "My wife runs this foundation independent of my business operations," he said smoothly. "But I'm proud to fund it, proud to support her vision, and proud that the Barone name is finally associated with building something instead of controlling it." The cameras went wild. Later, after the crowds dispersed and the sun set over Brooklyn, they stood in the foundation's main room, empty now except for furniture waiting for its first residents. "You didn't just change my life," Cristiano said quietly, pulling her close. "You saved it. I was becoming the man everyone feared, and you showed me how to be the man someone could love." Melanie tilted her head up, kissing him softly. "And you showed me I was worth saving, that I could be more than my trauma, that fear and power aren't opposites, they're fuel." Jamie ran past, chasing Sophia's dog through the halls, his laughter echoing off walls that would soon shelter other children whose mothers were learning to stop running. "We made something good," Melanie whispered. "We made something revolutionary," Cristiano corrected. "A place funded by organized crime that actually helps people. Run by a woman who refused to be broken. Protected by men who understand that real power means protecting the vulnerable instead of exploiting them." "Is that what we are? Revolutionary?" "We're impossible," he said, smiling, "and I wouldn't have it any other way." They left the foundation as night fell, driving back to Barone Manor where gardens bloomed and security kept the world at bay. The FBI still watched them. The tabloids still whispered. But none of it mattered, because Melanie Carson Barone was no longer the hunted woman begging for a kiss. She was the queen who'd learned to command the darkness. And beside her, the devil who'd taught her how to rule. Their story should have been tragedy. The desperate woman and the dangerous man. The kiss that started a war. The love that bloomed in blood and violence. But instead, it became legend. The tale of a woman who asked for one kiss and got an empire. The story of a man who offered protection and found redemption. And the truth that sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is survive long enough to learn your own power. Because that kiss under the chandeliers, it didn't save her. It awakened her. Thank you for listening, my beautiful family and friends. Until next time, remember, Sometimes the kiss that saves you is the one you never meant to give. If Melanie's story touched you, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next love that rises from the fire.